The first thing I heard Monday morning was that Ethan Hayes, was the kept man of our Ice Queen CEO. I was about to go hunt down the son of a bitch who started the rumor when the queen herself descended upon our department. As everyone's jaws hit the floor, she walked straight up to me, personally straightened my collar, and said in a tone that was somehow both icy and doting, "I told you to sleep in, didn't I?" In that moment, I knew I was screwed. I could have jumped into the Hudson River, and I still wouldn't have been able to wash this off. Did you hear? Ethan Hayes, that new intern? He's Ms. Vance's boy toy. Holy crap, for real? Which Ms. Vance? You mean Isabel Vance? The walking glacier who can give you frostbite from 20 feet away. Duh, who else? I saw it with my own eyes. Her Maserati was parked out front yesterday, and that kid just waltzed right in like he owned the place. He looked so comfortable. You'd think he was getting into his own car. No way. This is huge. I was wondering about that guy. Clocks in at the last second, bolts out the door first. And the reports he turns and look like they were written by a chimpanzee. Turns out he's got friends in high places. More than friends, man. He's got the ultimate protection. The VIP suite. Damn, this world is so unfair. I graduated from Stanford, work my ass off day and night, and it's still not worth as much as a pretty face and knowing how to slack off. Monday morning. Vanguard Solutions. I shuffled in, still half asleep, and swiped my keycard. The moment I stepped into the open plan office, I felt it. The atmosphere was wrong. The entire department, all 50-something of them, turned their heads in unison. Their gazes locked onto me like searchlights. The expressions in their eyes were a chaotic kaleidoscope of contempt, envy, curiosity, and anger. A few of my female colleagues were looking at me with the predatory glint of gossip-starved wolves, like they wanted to strip me down right there and study my anatomy. I froze. What the hell? Did I get busted for being late? No, there were still 3 minutes until 9. Did I crash the server again? Couldn't be. I hadn't touched anything last night. I ran a hand through my messy hair and walked to my desk in a total haze. My ass had barely warmed the chair when Leo, the guy in the next cubicle, came sliding over on his wheelie chair like a maggot drawn to decay. He leaned in close, his voice a conspiratorial whisper, his face a grotesque mask of sleazy excitement. "Ethan, my man, you're a legend," playing it so close to the chest. Leo winked, nudging me with his elbow. "Come on, give me the scoop. How'd you conquer our Ice Queen? Got some secret weapon? Share with your boy. I'll buy you a beer." I just stared at him. "What are you talking about? What Ice Queen? Use your words, Leo." Still playing dumb. Leo shot me, and I get a look and jerk his chin toward the top floor, where the executive suites were. Ms. Vance. It's all over the company's Slack. They're saying her. You know, her boy toy. I just taken a sip of my coffee. The hot liquid sprayed out of my mouth all over Leo's face. Cough, cough. I choked, my face turning crimson. "What the hell are you talking about?" "Who? Isabel Vance? Me? Her boy toy." I felt like I just heard the joke of the century. Isabel Vance? The founder of Vanguard Solutions. A legend in the business world who had built a billion-dollar empire by the age of 27. A woman whose name alone was enough to give her competitors nightmares. She was also unanimously known as the company's walking cryo chamber, the kind with industrial-strength cooling. The story goes that no one ever dared to make eye contact with her in meetings. When she turned on her full power, the temperature in the conference room would instantly drop below freezing. And me? Ethan Hayes, a painfully average intern whose greatest ambition was to clock out on time, so he could go home and play video games. My ultimate life goal was to be a happy, well-paid slacker. The two of us were like Mount Everest and the Mariana Trench. We didn't even exist in the same ecosystem. And now someone was saying I was her kept man? There have to be some basic rules for slander, right? Leo, have you been reading too many trashy romance novels during work again? You actually believe this crap? I grumbled, grabbing a napkin to wipe my mouth. Leo wiped the coffee off his face, his expression turning serious. "How can I not? Somebody saw you getting into her car. The picture's gone viral." He pulled out his phone and opened the company-wide Slack channel, a digital mosh pit with hundreds of employees. A high-res photo filled the screen. Under the dim glow of streetlights, next to a sleek Maserati, a man was opening the passenger side door. Even though it was just a profile shot, I recognized him instantly. It was me, goddammit. Beneath the photo, the thread already had 999 plus replies. Confirmed. It's that guy Ethan from the IT department. No wonder. I was wondering how he got away with slacking off all day. He's been busy. Servicing the boss. That's the life. Must have strong teeth to be chewing on that golden rice bowl. I'm so jealous I could scream. Girls, don't be salty. With a face like that, he's definitely got the capital to be a boy toy. That side profile is killer. I stared at the picture, a buzzing sound filling my head as the memory came flooding back. It was last Sunday night. I'd stayed late fixing a bug, and when I was finally ready to go home, a torrential downpour had started. There wasn't an Uber to be found. Just as I was about to make a desperate, soaking run for the subway, a Maserati pulled up beside me. The window rolled down, revealing a face of stunning, cold beauty. It was our elusive CEO, Isabel Vance. Get in. Her voice was as cold as ice, completely devoid of emotion. As a lowly intern, how could I refuse the boss's offer? I scrambled into the car, shivering. We didn't exchange a single word the entire ride. The pressure inside the car was suffocating. I breathed as shallowly as I could, feeling like one extra exhale would get me flash frozen on the spot. And that one simple act of a boss giving an employee a ride home had somehow turned into conclusive proof of a sugar mama relationship. The imagination of my colleagues was truly something else. Just as I was about to type a clarification in the Slack channel, the roar of my manager echoed from his office. Hayes, get your ass in here. My heart sank. So the rumors had already reached management. I braced myself and walked into his office. My manager, Mr. Davison, was glaring at me with a look of pure disappointment. He slammed a file onto his desk. Look at this piece of crap you turn in. The data's full of holes. The logic is non-existent. I told you to have this in yesterday, and you drag your feet until now. Hayes, if you don't want to work here, just get out. Don't think for a second that. His tirade cut off abruptly. His eyes looked past my shoulder toward the door. The anger on his face froze, replaced by an expression of utter shock and terror. The office fell deathly silent. Curious, I turned around. Standing silently in the doorway was a tall, elegant figure. A perfectly tailored black pantsuit made her look like the imperious queen of a dark kingdom. It was Isabel Vance. Behind her stood her executive assistant and several other senior VPs. The entire department was silent enough to hear a pin drop. Isabel's gaze swept coolly over everyone in the office before finally landing on me. As everyone watched, their jaws practically unhinged, she strode forward. The sharp click-clack of her heels on the polished floor echoed in the silence as she walked, step by step, right up to me. Then, she did something that the entire company would remember for the rest of their lives. She reached out with a slender hand and, with a startlingly natural gesture, straightened the collar of my shirt, which was a little rumpled from my rush to get to work. Her voice, though still cool, seemed to carry an undeniable hint of intimacy. Why are you up so early? I told you to sleep in, didn't I? Boom. It was as if an atomic bomb had been dropped on our little corner of the office. Everyone's brain went completely blank. If before it had just been a rumor, Isabel's action and words were the equivalent of stamping an official, government-certified seal on my new identity as her boy toy. My manager's mouth was hanging open wide enough to fit an apple. His eyes looked like they were about to pop out of his head. He glanced from Isabel to me, his expression shifting from terror to fawning servility with a speed that would put a professional actor to shame. MMS. Vance. What? What brings you down here? Isabel didn't even look at him. Her gaze remained fixed on me. Her eyes, deep and cold as a winter lake, held a complex emotion I couldn't decipher. I was completely petrified. I could feel her fingertips cool against my skin, trembling almost imperceptibly. She smoothed my collar, but every hair on my body was standing on end. What was this woman trying to do? Did she have any idea what this would mean for my life at this company? Forget life, what about my slacking? Who would dare give me menial tasks now? Who would dare make me the scapegoat for their mistakes? She had just single-handedly destroyed my dream of a peaceful, lazy career. I opened my mouth to explain, but my throat was too dry to make sound. In the face of Isabel Vance's overwhelming presence, all words felt useless. I've reviewed last night's files, Isabel finally said, her voice returning to its usual icy tone. But she was speaking to my manager. The core algorithm has a flaw. The solution Ethan proposed is the only viable one. Your entire department can't measure up to a single intern. The moment those words left her mouth, a sheet of cold sweat broke out on Davison's forehead. How was he supposed to know that the incomprehensible mess I'd submitted was actually a solution? He'd assumed it was just more of my usual garbage and had rejected it outright. Yes, you're absolutely right, Ms. Vance. I was blind. I failed to see Mr. Hayes's talent. The manager stammered, bowing and scraping, his form of address for me changing instantly. Moof. Isabel grunted, ignoring him. She turned to her executive assistant. So now memo. Effective immediately, Ethan Hayes is transferred to the executive office. He'll be my special assistant. She deliberately stressed the word special. Then she looked at me again, her eyes holding an order that could not be refused. Ethan, pack your things. Meet me on the top floor in 5 minutes. With that, she turned and swept out of the department, her entourage of VPs trailing behind her like a royal court. She didn't give anyone a moment to process what had just happened. All that was left was the entire IT department, standing dumbfounded in her wake. The second Isabel's figure vanished, the office exploded. Holy shit. It's real. It's actually real. A direct transfer to the executive office as a special assistant. That's like taking a rocket ship up the corporate ladder. Special assistant? More like personal assistant. Damn. An office romance. They're playing on hard mode. Ethan. No, Mr. Hayes. Sir. From now on, you're my brother. Please, take me under your wing. The same colleagues who had been giving me the side eye just moments ago were now crowding around me, their faces plastered with sycophantic smiles. You'd think they were my long-lost relatives. Mr. Davison himself rushed over, beaming, to help me pack my desk. Oh, Ethan, my boy, this is all just a big misunderstanding. My eyes must have been clouded. I didn't see the genius right in front of me. You're a bigger man than me. I know you won't hold it against me, right? I looked at this crowd of people, whose expressions changed faster than a TikTok transition, and felt a wave of exhaustion. My mind was a complete mess. What was Isabel Vance playing at? Just because she gave me a ride home one time, she was going to repay me like this? This was the most insane form of repayment I had ever heard of. I was sure there was something else going on, and it definitely wasn't anything good for me. But right now, I didn't have a choice. Under a sea of adoring gazes, I clutched my sad little cardboard box containing a coffee mug, a succulent I was slowly killing, and a few half-eaten bags of chips, and got into the elevator headed for the top floor. On the way up, every person who got into the elevator looked at me like they'd seen a ghost, then respectfully greeted me with a Mr. Hayes. Me. My social anxiety was having a field day. When I reached the top floor, Isabel's executive assistant, a sharp-looking woman with gold-rimmed glasses, was already waiting for me. Mr. Hayes, this way, please. Ms. Vance is expecting you. Her tone was so polite, it was unnerving. I followed her into the legendary CEO's office. It was enormous, luxurious, and stark. An entire wall was a floor-to-ceiling window offering a panoramic view of half of Manhattan. Isabel was standing with her back to me, staring out the window like a beautiful, unfeeling statue. Ms. Vance, I said, forcing the words out. She turned around, her stunning face still etched with that permanent frost. She gestured for her assistant to leave, and the heavy door clicked shut, sealing us off from the world. Sit, she said, pointing to the chair opposite her massive desk. I sat. I felt like a prisoner awaiting sentencing. Isabel walked over and stood before me, looking down at me. Her gaze was as sharp as a scalpel, like she could see right through me. Do you know why I'm doing this? She asked coldly. I shook my head honestly. No idea. Because I need a shield, she said, her words blunt and emotionless. A shield. I was even more confused. Isabel pulled a document from her desk drawer and tossed it in front of me. It was a contract. A prenuptial agreement? No, the title read, Confidential Employment and Role-Playing Agreement. My eyes widened as I quickly scanned the contents. In short, Isabel Vance wanted to hire me to play the role of her secret lover, the very boy toy the entire company was gossiping about. The term was 1 year. The payment was $500,000 a month. During the contract period, I had to unconditionally cooperate with her, attend any event, act intimately, and make everyone believe that we were a real couple. At the end of the contract, I would receive a $5 million severance package, and we would go our separate ways. My brain shut down. This was something straight out of a novel. Fake dating? A contract relationship? Why? Me? I managed to swallow, my throat suddenly dry. Because you're average. You're a slacker. You have zero presence in this company. You're a blank slate. No one knows your background. You're the perfect cover. Isabel's answer was brutal, but it was also the truth. And she paused, adding, because last night you saw something you shouldn't have. I froze. Last night, I racked my brain, trying to remember anything besides the suffocating silence in the car. Suddenly, an image flashed to my mind. When I was getting out of the car, I saw a small pill bottle fall out her pocket. When she picked it up, her face seemed even paler than usual, and her hand was trembling. I hadn't thought anything of it at the time, but now. You don't ask what you're not supposed to ask. Isabel cut me off, her voice colder than ever. You just need to give me an answer. Will you sign or not? I looked at the contract, then at the woman standing before me. Sign and live a life of a $500,000 monthly salary, but with the constant risk of social death. Don't sign. And I had no doubt that with this woman's resources, I could disappear from this city by tomorrow. Was there really a choice? I'll sign. I picked up the pen and signed my name at the bottom of the agreement. Isabel nodded, satisfied, and put the contract away. Good. She walked back behind her desk and pressed the intercom. Amanda, add another invitation to the gala I'm attending tonight. The name is Ethan Hayes. Hanging up, she looked at me and issued her first secret order of the day. Be at my house at 7 tonight. There are a few cars in the garage. Pick one and drive yourself over. I'll text you the address and the gate code. And she paused, her eyes scanning me from head to toe. Change out of that outfit. Don't embarrass me. 6:50 in the evening. I was driving an Audi A8, the most understated car I could find in Isabel's garage, and had just pulled up to the gates of a private, ultra-wealthy community I'd only ever seen on TV. My GPS announced I had arrived. Staring at the palace-like mansion surrounded by a massive garden, I felt my worldview take a slight hit. So this is how the other half lives? Simple, I guess. I punched in the code Isabel had sent me, and the gates swung open. At the front door, motion sensor lights flickered on. A woman in a housekeeper's uniform, probably in her late 40s or early 50s, was waiting respectfully. Mr. Hayes, welcome. I'm the housekeeper. You can call me Maria. Maria had a professional smile, but I could see the intense curiosity she was trying to hide. She had worked here for nearly a decade, and this was the first time Ms. Vance had ever brought a man home, and a young man who looked so ordinary. Hi, Maria. I nodded awkwardly, changing into the slippers she offered. Miss Vance is upstairs getting dressed. She asked me to take you to the dressing room first. The dressing room. When I followed Maria into a room larger than my entire apartment, I was once again rendered speechless. For walls were lined with top-of-the-line menswear. Suits, shirts, casual wear, ties, cufflinks, luxury watches. Everything you could imagine. And it was all brand new, with the tag still on. All this. I gestured at the clothes, stunned. Miss Vance had it all delivered a few days ago. The sizes should all be tailored to you, Maria explained with a smile. She said you should pick something to wear to the gala tonight. I got it. This was all pre-planned. It seemed that whether or not I had been caught in the rain last night, whether or not I had gotten in her car, she had already set her sights on me. My slacker life had been a fish, and she just plucked me right out of the pond. I picked out a relatively low-key black suit and changed. It fit perfectly. The person in the mirror looked sharp and sophisticated. I barely recognized myself. Clothes really do make the man. Just as I was adjusting my tie in the mirror, I heard the sound of heels behind me. I turned around, and my breath caught in my throat. Isabel had shed her cold business suit for a stunning, wine-red evening gown. The dress was both daring and elegant, perfectly outlining her breathtaking curves. Her long hair, usually tied up in a severe bun, was now cascading over her shoulders like a waterfall, softening her sharp features and giving her an indescribable allure. Her makeup was subtle but exquisite, enhancing her already flawless features to a degree that was almost painful to look at. If the daytime Isabel was a queen of a frozen, snow-covered mountain, then the woman standing before me now was a deadly, seductive nightshade blooming in the darkness. My heart skipped a beat. I had to admit, this woman was dangerously beautiful. Isabel walked up to me and naturally reached out to straighten my slightly crooked tie. Her fingertips brushed against my throat. My entire body went rigid. A faint, cool fragrance drifted into my nose, making my mind wander. "Acceptable," Isabel said after looking me over, her assessment not exactly warm, but at least not negative. "Let's go." She turned and gracefully walked out of the dressing room. I took a deep breath, pushing down the strange flutter in my chest, and followed her. Outside, a Rolls-Royce Phantom was waiting silently. A driver held the door open. Isabel got in first, and I followed. The door closed, shutting out the rest of the world. The car was spacious, but the atmosphere felt heavy. Isabel was leaning back against the seat with her eyes closed, as if resting. A trace of fatigue I hadn't noticed before was visible on her beautiful profile. I didn't dare speak, just watch the city lights streak by the window. "Remember," Isabel said after a long silence, her eyes still closed. "When we get to the gala, say little, smile a lot, and stay close to me. If anyone asks about our relationship, you tell them, we're childhood sweethearts." Childhood sweethearts? I almost laughed out loud. That was the most ridiculous excuse I'd ever heard. But I just nodded. Got it. And Isabel seemed to remember something else. She opened her eyes. In the dim light of the car, they shone with a startling brightness. "Tonight, no matter what you see or hear, don't be surprised. And don't interfere. You just need to play your part." Devoted boyfriend who only has eyes for me and couldn't care less about anything else. She emphasized the word boyfriend with a particular edge. A bad feeling started to creep up my spine. Tonight's gala was not going to be simple. The car soon pulled up to a private, exclusive club in the heart of downtown. The entrance was a parade of luxury cars and high fashion. When I walked into the grand, gilded ballroom with Isabel on my arm, we immediately became the center of attention. Countless eyes shot toward us like arrows. Most of them were aimed at me. After all, Isabel Vance was notoriously the ice queen of the business world. Since her debut, she'd never had a single rumor about her love life, let alone brought a male companion to an event like this. And tonight, she hadn't just brought one, she was holding on to him with an air of intimacy. Who was this man? The question was on everyone's mind. I felt like a monkey in a zoo, completely out of my element. I could only follow Isabel's instructions, keeping a pleasant smile on my face while leaning slightly toward her in a protective stance. Isabel seemed completely unfazed by the attention, her expression as placid as a frozen lake. She led me through the crowd, heading straight for the host of the evening. "Mr. Thompson, happy birthday." A portly, balding middle-aged man holding a glass of champagne greeted us with a wide grin. Ms. Vance, your presence truly honors my humble gathering." "Mr. Thompson's eyes flickered over to me, a probing look in them. "And this is my boyfriend, Ethan Hayes." Isabel's introduction was simple, but it carried the weight of a bombshell. The word boyfriend exploded in the crowd. The entire hall erupted in a low murmur. Mr. Thompson was also taken aback for a moment. Then he let out a hearty laugh. "So, this is Mr. Hayes, a fine young man indeed. You and Ms. Vance make a perfect couple, a match made in heaven. Come, Ms. Vance, Mr. Hayes, let me offer you a toast." The three of us clinked glasses and drank. Just then, a discordant voice cut through the air from nearby. Well, Ms. Vance's taste in men is certainly unique." I followed the voice and saw a handsome young man in a white suit. His eyes, however, held a sinister glint as he swirled his drink, looking at us with a smirk. "Isn't that Julian Croft, the VP from Apex Innovations, Vanguard's mortal enemy? What's he doing here? This is going to be good. Everyone knows he's been chasing Ms. Vance for years and getting shot down." Whispers rippled through the crowd. I immediately understood. This was the trouble Isabel had been expecting tonight. Julian's presence made the festive atmosphere in the hall turn tense. His gaze slithered over me like a snake, filled with undisguised hostility and contempt. Ms. Vance, aren't you going to introduce us? I don't believe I've seen this one before, Julian said, his tone flippant. Isabel's expression turned a few degrees colder. She didn't even look at him, instead turning to me and speaking in a soft voice. Ethan, are you hungry? Do you want to get something to eat over there? Her tone, her use of my first name, it was so intimate it sent shivers down the spines of those around us. I was taken aback for a second. Ethan? This woman was a fast learner. I played along, nodding with a doting smile. Whatever you want. Our little interaction was like pouring gasoline on a fire for Julian. His face instantly darkened. Isabel. Julian's voice rose. I'm talking to you. Only then did Isabel slowly turn her head to look at him, her eyes as cold as if she were looking at a corpse. Mr. Croft, I don't believe we have anything to talk about. You. Julian was choked with anger. He took a deep breath and aimed his verbal assault directly at me. You. Who are you? State your name. Before I could speak, Isabel took a half step forward, shielding me behind her. It was a small gesture, but it screamed protection. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried clearly across the ballroom. Julian, who I'm with is none of your business. One sentence. A total power move. The entire hall fell silent. Everyone was stunned by Isabel's forceful declaration. This wasn't just introducing a boyfriend. This was a declaration of ownership to the entire world. Julian's face cycled through shades of red and white. Being so publicly humiliated by Isabel was a massive blow to his ego. Fine. A great answer. Julian laughed, his anger twisting his features. Isabel, you really go to great lengths to reject me. Where did you even hire an actor like this? He pointed at me and sneered, Hey kid, how much did she pay you to play this part? I'll double it. His words made the gazes of the people around us turn speculative. It was true. Compared to the wealthy and successful Julian Croft, I looked utterly ordinary. It seemed plausible that Isabel had just picked some random guy off the street to make him angry. I frowned. Even if this was just an act, this guy was a real piece of work. I was about to say something, but Isabel squeezed my hand gently. She was telling me to stay quiet. A cold smile touched her lips as she looked at Julian. Mr. Croft, do you really think that every woman in the world should just fall at your feet? And do you think every relationship can be measured in dollars and cents? Let me tell you something. The man I choose is someone a person like you could never compare to. As for money, she paused, a contemptuous smile on her face. His family's money probably just happens to be a little bit more than your entire family's fortune. Boom. Another bombshell. Everyone was floored. This guy, Ethan, wasn't just Isabel's boyfriend. He was some secret billionaire. This script was getting wild. Julian's face was a mask of disbelief. Impossible. I've checked. There are no major families with the surname Hayes in our circle. Then your circle is smaller than you think, Isabel said coolly, her voice dripping with disdain. She took my hand and turned to leave. Stop. Julian, clearly having lost all reason, lunged forward and tried to grab Isabel's arm. In an instant, my expression turned cold. It was pure instinct. The moment Julian's hand was about to touch Isabel, I moved. My action wasn't fast. It was almost casual. I simply lifted my hand and precisely grabbed his wrist. And then a gentle twist. Crack. A sharp, distinct sound of a bone popping out of place, followed by Julian's blood-curdling scream, echoed through the ballroom. Arg! My arm. You broke my arm. Julian's face went white with pain. Cold sweat poured down his forehead as he collapsed to the ground, cradling his wrist. Everyone was stunned by the sudden violence. No one had expected this quiet, smiling boy toy to be so ruthless. One move, and he had disabled Julian Croft. I shook my hand as if I had touched something filthy. I looked down at Julian, who was writhing on the floor, my eyes like chips of ice. You don't touch her. My tone, my posture, it was even more arrogant than Isabel's. Isabel herself was stunned. She hadn't expected me to act, let alone be so skilled. She looked at my back, and for the first time, a strange light flickered in her cold eyes. The host, Mr. Thompson, and a group of security guards rushed over. Mr. Croft, are you all right? Quick, call an ambulance. The scene descended into chaos. Isabel, however, remained unnervingly calm. She walked to my side and linked her arm through mine as if nothing had happened. "Let's go." And just like that, under the awed, terrified, and curious gazes of everyone present, we walked out of the ballroom, leaving behind a mess and a one-armed Julian Croft. Once we were back in the car, the atmosphere was even stranger than on the way there. I rubbed my wrist, a little regretful. That was impulsive, but Julian had been asking for it. As a slacker, the one thing I hated most was trouble. Now I'd gone and broken the arm of the VP of Apex Innovations. This was going to be a huge pain. You. We both spoke at the same time, then stopped. "You first," I said. Isabel looked at me, silent for a moment before speaking. "You've had training?" "Yeah, I took some Krav Maga classes a few years back," I lied smoothly. The truth was, I'd never had any formal training. My skills were all honed in virtual reality, sparring against advanced combat AIs. This was the first time I'd ever actually used it on a person. Turned out it was pretty effective. "You did well tonight," Isabel said, her tone softening slightly. Huh, I was surprised. I thought she'd be angry at me for causing a scene. "Julian Croft is my company's biggest rival and the person I despise most in this world," Isabel said, looking out the window. "Tonight, you took care of a problem for me. But," she added, her tone shifting, "you've also made a powerful enemy. You won't let this go. So what now?" I asked, a little nervous. "Don't worry." Isabel turned to look at me, her eyes gleaming with a light called control. "As long as I'm here, he can't touch you." I didn't know why, but seeing her confidence, my anxious heart actually began to calm down. This woman might be cold, but she was also reliable. The next day, the story of how I broke Julian Croft's arm spread through the business world like wildfire. And, of course, throughout Vanguard Solutions. Now, the way people at the office looked at me had changed from jealousy and envy to pure awe. This guy wasn't a boy toy. He was a goddamn dragon. Handsome, skilled in combat, and most importantly, protected by the Ice Queen CEO herself. He was basically a protagonist from a novel. And me? I just felt tired. All I wanted was to be a slacker. Why was it so hard? I was now officially the CEO's special assistant. My office was a huge desk right outside Isabel's, and I was the only one there. My daily tasks consisted of sitting in on meetings with Isabel, reviewing documents, and drinking coffee. I was so bored I was about to start growing moss. One afternoon, Isabel was in a video conference about a crucial overseas project. With nothing to do, I was writing a small program on my laptop for fun. Suddenly, Amanda, Isabel's executive assistant, rushed out of the office, her face pale with anxiety. "Ethan, we have a problem." "What's wrong?" I looked up. Apex somehow got their hands on our core data for this project. They're countering our every move in the meeting. "Ms. Vance is in a very difficult position." Amanda was sweating bullets. Vanguard and Apex had been competing for this project for months. Now that Apex had our data, it was like they could see our cards in a poker game. How could we win? If we lost this project, it would be a devastating blow to Vanguard. I frowned. Apex Innovations again. Julian Croft again. So, a broken arm wasn't enough to teach him a lesson. He had to resort to dirty tricks. I glanced at the closed door of the CEO's office, imagining the immense pressure Isabel must be under. "Amanda, calm down," I said, standing up. "Send me all the files related to this project and all the public information you have on Apex." "Huh? What do you need those for?" Amanda asked, confused. "Don't ask. Just do it," I said, my tone leaving no room for argument. Though bewildered, Amanda quickly sent a batch of encrypted files to my email. I sat back down at my computer, and my fingers began to fly across the keyboard. My eyes sharpened with intense focus. The lazy, slacker persona vanished without a trace, replaced by an aura of absolute confidence and control. If a top-tier programmer had been there, they would have been flabbergasted. My coding speed had surpassed the limits of human capability. Lines of complex code flowed down my screen like a waterfall. I wasn't just reading the files. I was infiltrating. Vanguard Solutions' firewall was supposed to be impregnable, but that was before I got here. Now, the entire company network was an open book to me. I quickly found it. An internal IP address had transferred a large number of encrypted files to an overseas server late one night, 3 days ago. The IP address traced back to the office of Marcus Thorne, one of the company's VPs. So there was a mole. I smirked. My fingers never stopped moving. I followed the digital trail right to the servers of Apex Innovations. For anyone else, it would be a fortress. For me, it was just a slightly more complex backyard. Less than 10 minutes later, every internal document Apex had created since its founding, financial reports, project secrets, even Julian Croft and his father's personal dirt, was laid bare on my screen. Got it. A cold smile played on my lips. I discovered that to secure this overseas project, Apex had embezzled a huge amount of company funds for a high-risk, off-the-books leveraged investment. Right now, that investment was teetering on a knife's edge. The slightest push would send it crashing down. And I was currently holding not just a feather, but a whole goddamn anvil. I picked up the internal phone on my desk and dialed Isabel's line, right in the middle of her meeting. It's me. Isabel's voice, tired and confused, came through the line. Ethan, I'm in a meeting. What is it? No time to explain. I said quickly, open your bid proposal right now. On the third item, the licensing fee for the core technology, add a decimal point. What? Isabel was stunned. What are you talking about? Our bid would be 10 times higher than Apex's. That's impossible. Trust me. I only said those 2 words. My voice was calm, but it held a power that was impossible to resist. There was silence on the other end of the line. After what felt like an eternity, Isabel finally spoke. Okay. I hung up, leaned back in my chair, and let out a long breath. The rest was up to her. Inside the CEO's office, the video conference continued. The representative from Apex was arrogant and aggressive, tearing Vanguard's proposal to shreds. Julian wasn't on the call, but I could imagine him smirking behind the screen. The Vanguard executives looked grim, their morale at rock bottom. Everyone thought this was a lost cause. Only Isabel, after that phone call, had suddenly become serene. She looked at the bid proposal on her screen, and her slender finger lightly tapped a key. A decimal point. She sent the revised final offer. When the Apex team saw Vanguard's bid, they burst out laughing. Ha ha, Ms. Vance, have you lost your mind? At that price, are you running a charity? It seems Vanguard Solutions is really on its last legs. Can't even get a bid right. The Vanguard executives were equally stunned. Ms. Vance, you. Isabel raised her hand, silencing them. She looked at the smug faces on the screen, and for the first time, a genuine, ice-cold smile appeared on her lips. Gentlemen, her voice carried clearly through the microphone. Perhaps you should take a look at Apex Innovation's stock price right now. The Apex team froze, then instinctively pulled up their stock tickers. One look, every smile froze on their faces. On the screen, the green line, representing Apex's stock price, was plummeting at a terrifying angle. A 90-degree drop. A free fall. In less than a minute, it had hit the circuit breaker. Trading was halted. Impossible. This is impossible. At that exact moment, their phones began ringing off the hook. It was their office. It's over. We're finished. Our leveraged fund. It collapsed. The company is bankrupt. The conference room fell silent, except for the desperate, agonized cries coming from the Apex side. Isabel slowly stood up, looking down at the devastated faces on the screen. Now, does anyone still have a problem with my bid? Her voice was quiet, but it landed like a sledgehammer on everyone's heart. Vanguard Solutions had won. They had won the multi-billion-dollar overseas project in a way that no one could comprehend. Even more shocking, their old rival, Apex Innovations, had suffered a stock market collapse, a ruptured capital chain, and had declared bankruptcy that very afternoon. A business empire had crumbled in less than an hour. The news hit the business world like a nuclear bomb. Everyone wanted to know what had happened. Inside Vanguard, every executive who had been in that meeting now looked at Isabel not just with awe, but with fear. To them, their beautiful CEO was a demon. She had destroyed an empire with a smile. It was terrifying. Only Isabel knew that she had very little to do with it. The real demon was the man who had made a single phone call. The moment the meeting ended, she walked out of her office. Ethan was leaning back in his chair like nothing had happened, casually swiping at his phone, playing what looked like a mindless puzzle game, as if he wasn't the one who had just annihilated a billion-dollar corporation. When he saw her, he looked up and asked lazily, "All sorted?" His tone was as casual as if he were asking, "What's for dinner?" Isabel walked up to him and looked at him, really looked at him. This man was an enigma. Who was he? How could an ordinary intern possess such terrifying hacking skills and business acumen? How did you do it? She asked, voicing the biggest question in her mind. A magician never reveals his secrets. I shrugged, putting on an air of mystique. I certainly wasn't going to tell her that I had shorted Apex's stock on the side and made a little pocket change. Not much, just a few million. Seeing my nonchalant attitude, the shock in Isabel's heart slowly subsided, replaced by a feeling she had never experienced before, a sense of security. Yes, security. Ever since she took over this massive family enterprise, she had lived every day surrounded by schemes and betrayals, walking on thin ice. She couldn't trust anyone. But today, this man, with his sheer power, had given her a feeling that she could actually rely on someone. In any case, thank you. Isabel's voice, for the first time, held a trace of genuine warmth. Don't mention it. It's a job. I waved my hand dismissively. Don't forget, we have a contract. This was me exceeding my KPIs. I expect a bonus. Isabel was actually amused by my money-grubbing act. It was just the slightest upturn of her lips, but it was like the first thaw of spring, breathtakingly beautiful. I stared, momentarily stunned. It was the first time I had ever seen the Ice Queen CEO smile. You'll get your money. Isabel's expression returned to normal. She turned and walked back in her office. Come in. I need to talk to you. I followed her inside. The door closed once again. Sit. I sat, waiting for her to continue. About Apex, I won't ask how you did it, Isabel said, getting straight to the point. I just want to know if this will have any blowback on Vanguard, or on you. Don't worry. My tracks are clean. No one will ever find out, I said confidently. It was no joke. I had used a chain of overseas proxy servers. Not even a god could trace it back to me. Good. Isabel nodded, seeming to relax. She took out the small white pill bottle I had seen once before, shook out 2 pills, and swallowed them dry. After she did, her face seemed to grow even paler. You? I couldn't help but ask, what exactly is wrong with you? I had done a little digging today, but strangely, I couldn't find any information on this medication, not in any hospital system or pharmaceutical database. It was as if this drug didn't exist. Isabel's health seemed to be as much of a mystery as she was. At my question, Isabel's body visibly tensed. She looked up, her eyes instantly becoming guarded and cold. I told you, don't ask what you're not supposed to ask. But I'm your boy toy, I said, shrugging with an innocent expression. Isn't it normal for me to be concerned about your health? How else am I supposed to make this look convincing? The excuse was flawless. Isabel looked at me, silent. The atmosphere in the office grew heavy once more. After a long time, she finally spoke, her voice laced with a deep, weary helplessness. It's a genetic condition. Once a month, it flares up. When it does, I experience hallucinations, emotional instability, and I even temporarily lose parts of my memory. This medicine can only suppress the symptoms. It can't cure it. My heart sank. No wonder she needed a shield. No wonder she was always so cold, pushing everyone away. She was afraid. Afraid of her condition being exposed. Afraid of doing something irreversible during an episode. Beneath her powerful exterior was a fragile, lonely soul. So you hire me Yes, Isabel looked at me, her eyes complex. I need someone who can be with me when an episode occurs. Someone who can control me. And I need someone who can help me keep this secret. Because there are many people in this company who are just waiting for me to fall. I thought of the mole, the VP Marcus Thorne. I understood. Isabel had been fighting this battle all alone. Why should I trust you? Isabel suddenly asked. The power you displayed today is terrifying. How do I know you weren't sent by someone else? That you're not just another Marcus Thorne? I smiled. Simple, I said, looking her in the eye. Because your condition, I think I can cure it. What did you say? Isabel shot up from her chair, knocking over a glass of water in her haste. The glass shattered on the floor, but she didn't care. She stared at me, her beautiful eyes filled with disbelief and a flicker of something. A light she hadn't even realized was there. The light of hope. You said, you can cure my condition. Her voice trembled with emotion. This disease had been a curse on her family for generations. She had consulted the world's best doctors, tried the most advanced medical technologies, and the answer was always the same. incurable, a slow death sentence. And now, this man of mysterious origins was telling her he could cure it? How is that possible? I didn't say I could cure it for sure. I said, I think. I corrected her carefully, but it's better than just waiting to die, isn't it? My words were blunt and cruel, but they hit her right where she was most vulnerable. She slowly sat back down, her body slumping against the chair. She was right. How could things get any worse? What are your conditions? She asked, her businesslike composure returning. She didn't believe in free lunches. A man with my abilities could have anything he wanted. Why would he help her? Of course I have conditions, I smiled, holding up 2 fingers. First, get rid of that VP, Marcus Thorne. I have a thing about tidiness. I don't like seeing rats scurrying around the company. It's disgusting. A sharp glint appeared in Isabel's eyes. Thorne was a holdover from her father's era, with deep roots and many allies in the company. She had wanted to get rid of him for a long time, but had never had the right opportunity. Done, she agreed without hesitation. As long as you can give me the evidence that he was the mole, I'll have him gone by tomorrow. Evidence? That's the easy part. I snapped my fingers. I'll email it to you in a bit. And the second condition? Isabel pressed. The second one. I stroked my chin, looked at her, and then broke into a grin. Haven't thought of it yet. You can owe me. You. Isabel was so exasperated by my casual attitude, she was speechless. This was a matter of life and death, and he hadn't even thought about his terms? All right, I said, standing up and stretching. It's quitting time for me. I'm heading out. Oh, by the way, as your boy toy and personal physician, I'll be moving into your house starting tomorrow. 4. Closer observation of your condition. No problem with that, right? Without waiting for her reply, I walked out of the office. Isabel stared at my retreating back, stunned. It took her a few moments to process what had just happened. That bastard. He was giving her orders now? And he was moving in with her. Her cheeks, against her will, grew warm. The next day, I officially moved into Isabel's mansion. Meanwhile, a massive earthquake shook Vanguard Solutions. At the morning executive meeting, CEO Isabel Vance, in front of everyone, presented irrefutable evidence. It proved that VP Marcus Thorne had, over the past 3 years, repeatedly leaked company secrets to their competitor, Apex Innovations, causing hundreds of millions of dollars in losses. Thorne was immediately taken away by security and handed over to the authorities. His network of allies within the company was swiftly and ruthlessly purged by Isabel. The entire company was in shock. Everyone was terrified by Isabel's decisive and brutal methods. They also finally understood why Apex had suddenly gone bankrupt. The CEO had been playing a long game all along. In an instant, Isabel's authority in the company reached an all-time high. And as the mastermind behind it all, I was currently lounging on the couch in her mansion, eating fruit that Maria had cut for me and watching TV, as relaxed as a retiree. Mr. Hayes, did Miss Vance really get rid of Mr. Thorne? Maria asked, her face still showing a hint of shock as she brought me some tea. Yep, he got what he deserved, I said without looking up from the TV. Maria looked at me with even greater reverence. This young man was terrifying. Without making a sound, he had helped the missus eliminate her biggest internal threat. That evening, Isabel returned. She looked exhausted, but her eyes were brighter than ever. With Thorne gone, she felt like a weight had been lifted from the entire company. You're back. I greeted her like I owned the place. Maria made that sea base you like. Go wash up, dinner's ready. Isabel looked at me, making myself at home. She wanted to smile, but she held it back. She found that she was getting used to having someone else in the house. The atmosphere at dinner was unusually warm. By the way, I said, my mouth half full of ribs, isn't there a quarterly review meeting tomorrow? The one all the managers have to attend. Yes, why? Isabel asked, sipping her soup elegantly. Tomorrow, I said with a mysterious smile, is going to be a good show. Isabel was confused, but she didn't press. At this point, she had started to trust me unconditionally. The next day, Vanguard Solutions Auditorium. The quarterly review meeting was underway. Isabel sat at the center of the stage, her expression like ice. I sat beside her in my capacity as special assistant to the CEO. Below the stage, hundreds of mid-level and senior managers were seated. The meeting proceeded smoothly. Just as it was about to conclude, a dissonant voice suddenly spoke up. A middle-aged man in the front row stood up. He was the newly appointed director of marketing, a man named Howard Kane, one of Marcus Thorne's protégés who had managed to survive the purge by keeping a low profile. Ms. Vance, I have a question, Kane said, his eyes holding a hint of defiance as he looked at Isabel. Speak, Isabel said coolly. I'd like to ask about Mr. Hayes, sitting next to you, Kane said, pointing at me, his voice loud enough for the entire hall to hear. On what grounds does he deserve to sit in that position? He's a new intern with no experience and no accomplishments. Just because of his personal relationship with you, he gets to leapfrog all of us who have bled for this company? Is that fair to us? To anyone? His words were inflammatory, and they struck a chord with many in the audience. Plenty of people had been resentful of me for a while. Why him? Just because he was handsome? A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Many people were now looking at me with hostility. This was a public challenge. Kane was attempting a coup. All eyes turned to Isabel, waiting to see how she would handle the situation. But before Isabel could speak, I slowly picked up the microphone. Mr. Kane, is it? My voice, amplified by the speakers, filled the auditorium. I still had that lazy smile on my face, as if this public shaming was nothing more than a boring little play. Seeing me take the bait, a triumphant smirk appeared on Kane's face. So, you can resist, kid? The moment you open your mouth, I have 100 ways to humiliate you. That's right, Kane said, puffing out his chest. I'm just speaking up for all the hard-working employees of this company. Hard-working? I chuckled. That's a good one. Since we're talking about hard work, Mr. Kane, I'd like to ask you about your so-called accomplishments. Kane froze. What do you mean? Nothing much, I said, leaning back in my chair and crossing my legs, as relaxed as if I were in my own living room. I was just curious about that big contract your department signed last quarter with the Majestic Group. A deal you claimed had a $30 million profit margin, which you've been bragging about all over the company. But from what I understand, my gaze sharpened, the chairman of the Majestic Group is your wife's uncle, isn't he? And for that deal, not only did our company not make a single cent, we actually lost $5 million in channeling fees. That money, if I recall correctly, ended up in an offshore private account, an account registered to your son, who just started college. Am I right? My words were delivered at a calm, even pace, but each one landed like a sledgehammer on Howard Kane's heart. His face instantly turned deathly pale. Cold sweat soaked through his shirt. How? How could he know all this? He had covered his tracks perfectly. The audience exploded. Holy crap. Is that for real? He's stealing from the company. That explains it. Kane's son just went overseas last year, and he's already driving a Ferrari. This is insane. Using company money to line his own pockets. Quiet down, this is huge. Hearing the whispers around him, Kane began to tremble uncontrollably. He pointed a shaking finger at me and yelled, You're lying. This is slander. I'll sue you for defamation. Defamation? My smile widened. Don't be so hasty, Mr. Kane. I'm not finished. I took out my phone and connected it to the auditorium's large screen. With a single tap, a series of photos and videos appeared for everyone to see. There were photos of Kane drinking with a Majestic Group's chairman at a private club. There were bank transfer records clearly showing the $5 million transaction. There was even a video of Howard Kane at a karaoke bar with a young woman on each arm, behaving in a way that was frankly obscene. In the video, Kane's greasy face was split in a wide grin. Oh, baby, you have no idea? Our CEO, she's just a figurehead. It's us old guys who really run the show. Once I get her out of the picture, I'll be the king of this company. Boom. If before there was doubt, now there was undeniable proof. The entire hall fell silent. Everyone was stunned by the disgusting images and the arrogant words on the screen. This man wasn't just corrupt and immoral. He was plotting a takeover. The audacity was breathtaking. Isabel's face was so cold it could have caused frostbite. She stared at the man on the screen, her eyes filled with murderous rage. As for Howard Kane, the moment he saw that video, his mind went blank. It was over. Everything was over. His legs gave out, and he collapsed to the floor with a thud. No, it's not real. It's fake. It's photoshopped, he stammered, making a last, desperate attempt to save himself. I put my phone away, picked up the microphone, and spoke to the audience. So, does anyone else think I don't deserve to sit here? Does anyone else think this company needs this kind of veteran, this kind of accomplishment? The hall was silent. Those who had supported Kane, those who had looked at me with hostility, now stared at the floor, not daring to breathe. This was no joke. This Mr. Hayes wasn't a boy toy. He was the goddamn Grim Reaper. He held the book of life and death, and anyone who crossed him would be socially executed on the spot, their reputation destroyed for all eternity. Terrifying. Security. Isabel's cold voice finally broke the silence. Get this man out of my sight, and inform the legal department. I want him to spend the rest of his life in prison. Security guards rushed forward and dragged the ashen-faced Howard Kane out of the auditorium like a sack of garbage, his pleas for mercy fading as he disappeared. The attempted coup ended in the most dramatic way possible. After this battle, my status at Vanguard Solutions was legendary. No one ever dared to question my position again. After the meeting, I followed Isabel back to her office. "How did you get all that?" she asked, looking at me with a complex expression. She knew I was capable, but she hadn't realized my abilities were practically supernatural. Like I said, I don't like rats, I shrugged. Last night, I did a little digging, ran a background check on everyone in the company at the director level and above. And it turns out, quite a few of them are dirty. I handed her my phone. On the screen was a long list of names. Next to each name was a file containing evidence of their corruption and abuse of power. Isabel's hand trembled as she took the phone. She had never imagined that the company she had built would be so rotten from the inside. If it weren't for me, the consequences would have been unthinkable. "I will deal with all of them," she said, taking a deep breath. She looked at me, her eyes full of gratitude. "Ethan, thank you. Really. There you go again." I waved it off. "I told you it's a job. If you really want to thank me, you can pay my consulting fee." "Consulting fee?" Isabel looked confused. I pointed at her. "Your condition. I'm starting your treatment tonight." Night. Isabel's study. The atmosphere was tense. I sat at her desk, in front of a specially modified laptop. The screen was black, with lines of green code scrolling by an incredible speed. Isabel sat quietly on a nearby sofa, holding a cup of hot tea, but her eyes never left my back. She was nervous. For the first time in her life, she was placing her fate entirely in someone else's hands. And it was a man she had known for less than a week. Done. After what felt like an eternity, I finally stopped typing and let out a long breath. I spun around in the chair and looked at her. "Come here." Isabel put down her tea and walked over. "What is this?" she asked, looking at the extremely complex 3D model on the screen, which resembled the human nervous system and brain structure. "This is your disease," I said, pointing to the dense, flashing red dots on the screen. "To be precise, it's not a disease. It's a genetic lock." "A genetic lock?" Isabel frowned. She had never heard that term before. "Yes." My expression grew serious. "To put it simply, a very specific viral code was artificially implanted into your family's DNA. This code is usually dormant, but it activates at regular intervals. When it activates, it viciously attacks your central nervous system, causing hallucinations, emotional instability, and memory loss. And each attack consumes a massive amount of your life force. That's why people in your family tend to die young, right?" Isabel's face went pale. Everything I said was exactly right. Her grandfather, her father, both had died before the age of 50 from this strange illness. She had always thought it was a family curse. She had never imagined it was. "Man-made. Who did this?" she asked, her voice like ice, filled with a deep, seething hatred. "I don't know." I shook my head. "This genetic code is ancient and incredibly sophisticated. It's impossible to create with current technology. Perhaps one of your ancestors crossed the wrong person." Isabel swayed, nearly losing her balance. The truth was a devastating blow. A warm hand steadied her arm. "It was me. Don't worry. Since I found the cause, I can find a solution." My voice was quiet but reassuring. Isabel looked up at me. Under the light, his profile was sharp, and his eyes, usually lazy, were now filled with confidence and focus. Her heart, for no reason at all, calmed down. "What do we need to do?" "Simple," I said, pointing at the 3D model. "I'm going to write a new antivirus program. upload it into your system, and eliminate all the viruses. The process might be a little painful. Can you handle it? I can, Isabel answered without hesitation. Compared to death, a little pain was nothing. Good, I nodded. Go to your bedroom, lie down on the bed, relax, and clear your mind. Isabel did as she was told. I took a deep breath and retrieved a futuristic-looking helmet-like device from a case, then followed her into the bedroom. Her bedroom was large, and the decor, like her, was minimalist and cool. The air was filled with the same faint, cold fragrance she wore. She was already lying on the bed, her eyes closed, her long eyelashes trembling slightly, betraying her inner turmoil. I gently placed the helmet on her head. Then, I took out an identical one and put on myself. Remember, no matter what happens, do not resist my consciousness. My voice was transmitted directly into her mind through the helmet's internal communicator. I'm going into your mind. Okay, Isabel whispered. I pressed a button on the helmet. A low hum filled the air. In the next second, both our minds plunged into darkness. When Isabel opened her eyes again, she found herself in a pure white, endless space. There was nothing here, only infinite white and infinite loneliness. Where is this? She asked, bewildered. This is the deepest level of your subconscious, your mental core. My voice came from behind her. She turned and saw me standing a short distance away, smiling at her. You, don't be afraid, I said, walking to her side and taking her hand. I'm here, my Handwasserfarm. It was the first time in over 20 years that Isabel's frozen heart had felt a flicker of warmth. Just then, the white space began to shake violently. Vicious, blood-red cracks appeared in the sky. Countless red dots poured out of the cracks, coalescing into a giant, hideous monster that let out a silent roar. Is that the physical manifestation of the genetic lock? Isabel asked, her face pale, her body trembling uncontrollably. This was a fear that came from the depths of her soul. She felt like her very consciousness was about to be consumed by that evil presence. Don't be afraid. My voice sounded again. I pulled Isabel behind me and faced the terrifying monster alone. Just a little bug. I looked at the monster, a contemptuous smile on my lips. You dare act so arrogantly in front of me. As I spoke, a vast galaxy of golden code materialized behind me. The galaxy was brilliant and profound, as if it contained the secrets of a universe. The golden light illuminated the entire white space, and it illuminated Isabel's face, which was filled with shock and fascination. She looked at the man standing before her like a god. A ridiculous thought, one she couldn't even believe she was having, popped into her head. Maybe keeping him by her side for the rest of her life wouldn't be so bad. The battle in the mental world was far more intense than imagined. The red monster, the manifestation of the genetic lock, seemed to be endless. It was destroyed by my golden code again and again, only to reform each time. Isabel could feel my breathing becoming heavier. Beads of sweat formed on my forehead. It was clear that this high-intensity mental battle was taking a huge toll on me. Ethan, maybe we should stop. Isabel's voice was filled with concern. Shut up. I snapped without turning around. When it comes to a woman's problems, if a man says he can handle it, he can handle it. Now stop talking. His tone was rough, but a wave of warmth spread through Isabel's heart. This man, he always spoke so crudely but acted with such tenderness. Found it. Your core. Suddenly, my eyes lit up. In the brief moment between the monster's reformations, I had finally located the tiny black, smoking core code hidden in its depths. Now, I roared, and the golden galaxy of code behind me instantly condensed into an indestructible sword. With world-destroying power, it plunged toward the black core. No! Boom! The black core shattered. The entire white space was instantly purified by the golden light. The hideous red monster dissolved into specks of light and vanished completely. Everything was calm again. My body swayed, and my face grew pale. Ethan! Isabel rushed forward to support me. I'm fine. I wave her off with a grin. Just a little tired. Guess I'm out of shape. It's been a while since I did this kind of heavy lifting. Seeing him trying to act tough, Isabel felt a mix of heartache and amusement. She reached out and gently wiped the sweat from his forehead. Her gesture was so natural, so tender. I froze. Isabel froze too. They stared at each other. The atmosphere suddenly became charged. Ahem. I was the first to break the silence, coughing awkwardly. Well, the virus is gone. We should probably get out of here. With a snap of my fingers, a force pulled our consciousnesses back to the real world. In the bedroom, Isabel and I removed the devices from our heads. Outside, the sky was beginning to lighten. A whole night had passed. How do you feel? I asked, looking at her. Isabel closed her eyes, carefully sensing her body. She felt lighter than ever before. The cold, stabbing pain that had constantly plagued her mind was completely gone. In its place, a warm and powerful life force flowed through her. She knew. She was healed. Completely. She opened her eyes. For the first time, tears welled up in her usually frosty eyes. "Thank you," she said to me, her voice choked with emotion. She had never said those two words with such sincerity before. "I told you, don't thank me," I said, getting up and stretching my stiff body. "Just make sure you pay the bill. I'm going to get some sleep. I'm dead tired." With a yawn, I walked out of the bedroom. Isabel watched me go, and the tears finally fell. They were tears of joy and tears of gratitude. The next few days were peaceful. After recovering, Isabel was a new woman. She was radiant, and her work efficiency was terrifyingly high. Under her leadership, Vanguard Solutions shed its previous stagnation and began to expand aggressively in the business world. And I returned to my slacker ways. My days at the office consisted of drinking tea, reading the news, and occasionally accompanying Isabel to events to play the role of the loving couple. Our relationship also began to change subtly. Though neither of us said anything, everyone in the company could feel it. The way Ms. Vance looked at Mr. Hayes was different. It wasn't the way a boss looks at a subordinate. It was the way a woman looks at her man. It was a look filled with tenderness, dependence, and a love that even she hadn't fully realized yet. One day, the company had a major contract signing with an important overseas client. The venue was a five-star hotel downtown. Isabel, myself, and a few executives arrived early. The signing ceremony was to be held in the top-floor conference room. We all got into the elevator. The doors closed, and the numbers began to climb. Just as the elevator reached the 30th floor, clang, a loud bang. The elevator jolted violently, and all the lights went out, plunging us into darkness. What's going on? The elevator's broken. Panic erupted. In the darkness, my eyes sharpened. This wasn't a simple malfunction. I could smell danger. I immediately pulled Isabel behind me. "Don't be afraid. I'm here." My voice was quiet, but it was like a tranquilizer, instantly calming the frantic Isabel. Just then, a distorted, raspy voice came through the elevator's emergency intercom. "Ms. Vance, Mr. Hayes, welcome to the final stage I've prepared for you. Now the game begins. There's a bomb in this elevator. You have 10 minutes. Have fun. Hee. The chilling laughter echoed in the confined space, making everyone's hearts sink. This was a trap. A deadly trap. A bomb. Help. I don't want to die. In the dark elevator car, the chilling laughter had barely faded before several of the executives completely lost it. Screams and sobs filled the small space. Fear was contagious. Even the usually composed Amanda was pale, her body trembling against the wall. Only two people remained calm. Everyone shut up. A cold reprimand, like a splash of ice water, instantly silenced the chaos. It was Isabel. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried an undeniable authority. In the darkness, though they couldn't see her face, everyone instinctively stopped crying. "Panicking won't solve anything. It will only waste the little time we have," she said calmly. I nodded in approval, as expected of the woman in charge of a billion-dollar corporation. That level of composure was rare. "Exactly," my voice rang out, carrying a strange sense of reassurance. "Don't worry, if the sky falls, our Ms. Vance will hold it up. Besides," I paused, my tone suddenly becoming lighthearted. "It's just a bomb. What's the big deal?" Everyone, "Dude, it's a bomb. It's going to kill us. Why you sound like you're talking about grocery shopping?" "Ethan, do you have a plan?" Isabel asked, finding my hand in the darkness. Her palm was cold and slick with sweat. Clearly, She wasn't as calm as she appeared. Don't worry. I squeezed her hand gently. Leave it to me. I pulled out my phone. The faint light from the screen illuminated my unervingly calm face. Everyone, do me a favor. Turn on your phone flashlights and shine them on the ceiling control panel, I instructed. The executives, though their legs were weak, followed my instructions out of a primal need to survive. Several beams of light converged on the elevator ceiling. With one arm around Isabel's waist, I pushed off the wall with one foot and, like a cat, silently scaled the wall, grabbing the edge of the ceiling panel and hanging in midair. The sight left everyone below speechless. Was this guy even human? He was like Spider-Man. I ignored their shock and quickly pried open the control panel, revealing a dense tangle of colorful wires. In the center of the mess, an object with a red digital timer was ticking silently. Tick-tock, tick-tock. The bright red numbers on the screen were counting down fast .08:42. Hit. It's useless. The raspy voice on the intercom chuckled again, filled with sadistic glee. This is a special bomb. The wire colors are randomized daily. Cut the wrong one, and we all go up in a puff of smoke. And a friendly reminder, I've completely jammed the signal in the elevator. Your phones are just bricks right now. Don't even think about calling for help. His words plunged everyone back into despair. But I acted as if I hadn't heard him. Hanging there with one hand, I used my other to quickly snap a few photos of the complex wiring with my phone. Then, my fingers began to dance across the screen at an impossible speed. They moved so fast they were just a blur. A waterfall of data streamed down the screen. Signal jamming? Child's play. A smirk touched my lips. In my world, there was no network I couldn't connect to. 30 seconds later. Done. My phone's signal bars went from 0 to a full 5G. I didn't call the police. I didn't try to disarm the bomb. Instead, I started a video call to Isabel's phone. Babe, look at me. I pointed my phone camera at myself. In the darkness, my handsome face was clearly visible in the faint light. I even gave the camera a peace sign. Everyone in the elevator was stunned. Isabel was stunned. Dude, the bomb is going to go off in 7 minutes. And you're starting a video call to be romantic. We're all going to die. Ethan, what are you? Isabel was both furious and panicked. Shoo, I put a finger in my lips, then mouthed 2 words to her. Trust me. For some reason, seeing the confidence in his eyes, Isabel's racing heart miraculously calmed down. She took a deep breath and nodded. The mysterious person on the other end of the intercom was clearly confused by my bizarre move. What? What are you doing? Live streaming, can't you tell? I said cheerfully. I've even got a title. My Ice Queen and I. Our final romance. It'll definitely go viral. You're insane. I'm not the one who's insane. My smile vanished, my eyes turning deadly cold. You are. You think you covered your tracks? An hour ago, you used an overseas proxy to plant a backdoor in the hotel security system. The number was rerouted 17 times, but unfortunately for you, the final login IP was from an abandoned factory in the south side of town. Oh, and by the way, you destroyed the factory security cameras, but you seem to have forgotten about the traffic cam 300 yards down the road. 15 minutes ago, it got a very clear shot of a black Honda Civic pulling in. The license plate was a 884 XJ. That car is registered to a man named Aiden Moss. Am I right, Mr. Moss? Every word I spoke was a sledgehammer, crushing the mysterious man's confidence. The other end of the intercom went silent, except for the sound of heavy, panicked breathing. He was clearly terrified. He couldn't understand how his flawless plan had been completely unraveled in just a few minutes. Now, let's change the rules of the game. My voice was as cold as a demon's from the 9th circle of hell. I'm giving you 1 minute to disarm this bomb. Or else, you and your entire Moss family will be wiped off the face of this earth. I promise. Beep. With a soft chime, the ticking from the bomb on the ceiling stopped. The red numbers froze at 103, then went dark. The intercom crackled with Aiden Moss's enraged roar, followed by the sounds of frantic escape, and then silence. The elevator car was quiet. Everyone was still in shock, unable to process what had just happened. In just a few minutes, a deadly crisis had been averted in such an unbelievable way. They looked at the young man who had just gracefully dropped down from the ceiling, their expressions beyond awe. They were looking at a god. Ding! The elevator lights flickered back on. The car began to move smoothly upward again. Everything was back to normal, as if the life-or-death situation had just been a dream. The signing ceremony was, of course, canceled. The hotel was in chaos, swarming with police and security. Under Amanda's arrangement, Isabel and I were whisked away through a secret exit. In the car, the atmosphere was suffocating. Isabel stared down at her lap, not saying a word. Her body was trembling slightly, not from fear but from rage and a profound sadness from a century of deception. Moss. She was familiar with that name. It was in her family's records. 100 years ago, the Moss family had been a business powerhouse on par with her own ancestors. But in a crucial business war, her ancestor had crushed them, and they had vanished. She had always thought it was just a part of business history. She never imagined that behind it lay such a vicious, generational curse. Ethan, she looked up, her eyes red. My grandfather, my father, they didn't die of an illness, did they? They were killed by this curse. It drained the life out of them. Seeing her so fragile, yet so stubborn, my heart ached. I reached out and pulled her into a gentle hug. It's all in the past now. My voice was soft, gentle. From now on, you have me. Isabel's body tensed. Then the strength she had maintained for over 20 years finally shattered. She buried her face in my chest and sobbed like a heartbroken child. All the pain, loneliness, and suffering she had suppressed for so long pouring out. I said nothing, just held her quietly, letting her tears soak my shirt. I knew this woman had carried too much for too long. My job now was to help her put down those burdens one by one. Back at the mansion, Isabel had cried herself to sleep in my arms. I carefully carried her to bed and tucked her in. Looking at her tear-stained face, my expression softened. I leaned down and gently kissed her forehead. Then, I turned and walked out of the bedroom, my eyes turning to ice. I took out my phone and dialed an encrypted number. Yeah, it's me. I need you to run a check on someone. Aiden Moss and his entire family. I want everything you can find. All their records, all their dirt. Everything. Timeline. Before sunrise, I hung up and stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out at the dark night. A murderous glint flashed in my eyes. You dare touch my woman? I don't care if you're a 100-year-old family with a blood feud. All I know is, you're all going to die. By dawn, a thick file on the Moss family had been delivered to my encrypted email. I hadn't slept. I spent the entire night reading it from beginning to end. The Moss family was no joke. After being defeated by the Van Cess, they had gone underground, building a massive criminal empire that straddled the line between gray and black markets. Smuggling, money laundering, intelligence trafficking. They had done it all. And Aiden Moss was the current heir to this underground empire. He had been raised on a diet of hatred for the Vance family. His life's goal to destroy Vanguard Solutions and make them pay. The bomb was just his opening move. If I hadn't stopped him, he would have mobilized all of his family's resources to launch a full-scale, devastating attack on Vanguard from the business side. You want to play? I looked at the file on my phone, a cruel smile spreading across my face. Then let's play. I sat down on my computer, my fingers flying across the keyboard once more. A silent war began in the world of data. This time, I wasn't defending or counterattacking. This was total annihilation. I was going to drag the Moss family, this century-old cancer hiding in the shadows, out into the sunlight and rip them out by the roots. Just then, the bedroom door opened. Isabel walked out. She had changed into a sharp business suit. Though she still looked tired, her eyes were once again firm and sharp. The Ice Queen was back. No, she was stronger than before, because now she had a man standing behind her, a man she could trust with everything. Did you find them? She asked, walking up behind me and looking at the data, scrolling across my screen. Yep, I nodded. Just a family of rats who have been living in the sewer for too long. What are you going to do? You've always wanted to clean up Vanguard's image, to make it a truly respectable international corporation, right? I turned and smiled at her. I'm going to give you a gift that will make the Vanguard name go down in history. 9 a.m, Vanguard Solutions, executive boardroom. All the top-level directors and shareholders were present. The atmosphere was incredibly tense. The bomb incident at the hotel had been kept out of the media, but everyone in this room had heard about it through their own channels. They were here for an explanation. Who had Vanguard crossed? Could Isabel still guarantee the company's stability? Ms. Vance, you owe us an explanation for what happened yesterday, an old, white-haired director demanded. Our investments are contingent on security. That's right. If you can't even guarantee our personal safety, we have no problem pulling our funding, another major shareholder added. The room was on the verge of revolt. Isabel sat at the head of the table, her face a mask of stone, saying nothing. I sat beside her, sipping my tea casually, as if the coup attempt had nothing to do with me. Just as the situation was about to spiral out of control, I finally put down my teacup. Gentlemen, please calm down. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the noise. All eyes turned to me. I know you're all concerned about the company's future, I said, standing up and walking to the giant projection screen at the front of the room. I connected my phone to it. Before I give you an explanation, I'd like to invite you all to watch a live stream. A live stream? The room was filled with confused murmurs. With a tap of my finger, the screen lit up. It wasn't a financial report or a project proposal. It was a grid of security camera feeds. Hundreds of different feeds filled the screen. Shipping docks, smuggling routes, underground casinos, private clubs. Each screen showed a different, shocking, illegal transaction in progress. Weapons, drugs, stolen artifacts, even human trafficking. What? What is this? The seasoned business leaders were all stunned. They knew at a glance that this was irrefutable evidence of criminal activity. Any one of these clips, if leaked, would cause a massive public uproar. This, I said, my voice as cold and emotionless as a judge from hell, is the legacy of our friend from yesterday, Aiden Moss, and his family's 100-year-old enterprise. And now, I paused, a cold smile on my lips. On behalf of justice, I will deliver their final judgment. My finger tapped the enter key on my phone's virtual keyboard. Instantly, on every screen, the same thing happened. The sound of police sirens screamed from all directions. SWAT teams descended like gods from the heavens, storming every location. Arrests, gunfights, screams. A massive, nationwide crackdown on the entire criminal underworld was happening all at once. The boardroom was silent. Everyone was speechless, completely shocked by what they were seeing. They looked at the young man, standing in front of the screen, who had just destroyed a century-old criminal empire with the tap of a finger. All they felt was fear and awe. This wasn't business. This was the power of a god. And it wasn't over. I tapped my phone a few more times. The screen changed again. This time, it showed the back-end system of a massive international bank. An account belonging to the Moss Family Foundation was displayed. The balance was an astronomical number with too many zeros to count. This is their ill-gotten wealth, accumulated over 100 years, I said calmly. Then, in front of everyone, I began to type. Transfer. Recipient. National Charity Foundation. Amount all. As everyone watched, their jaws on the floor, that astronomical number drained to zero in seconds. When it was done, I put my phone away as if I had just done something trivial. I turned to the completely petrified board of directors and smiled. Is that explanation sufficient? Vanguard Solutions will not be in danger. On the contrary, for assisting the country in this major criminal crackdown, we will receive unprecedented prestige and support. As for your investments, I paused, my eyes sweeping over each of them. Does anyone still wish to withdraw their funding? The room was dead silent. Withdraw funding? Were they insane? All they wanted now was to cling to Ms. Vance and this. God, this wasn't a company. It was an invincible aircraft carrier. No, of course not. We fully support Ms. Vance's leadership. Mr. Hayes. No, President Hayes. You are a genius. The once aggressive directors were now on their feet, bowing and scraping, their faces plastered with fawning smiles. Another coup, averted in an even more shocking fashion. Isabel looked at the man beside her, the man who never ceased to amaze and shock her. Her cold eyes could no longer hide the deep, overwhelming love she felt. She knew she was completely, utterly, hopelessly his. 3 months later, Vanguard Solutions was a different company. For its role in dismantling the century-old Moss criminal empire, Vanguard received the nation's highest commendation and a series of unprecedented government support policies. The company's stock price soared, its market value tripled, and it became one of the top business juggernauts in the world. And Isabel Vance, the iron-fisted CEO, became a true legend in the business world. Of course, even more legendary than her was the man by her side, the man known as the godly assistant, Ethan Hayes. There were countless rumors about him in the company. Some said he was a top agent from a secret government agency sent to protect her. Others said he was the heir to a hidden, powerful family, just trying to experience normal life. Some even whispered that he wasn't human at all, but a futuristic AI in a human body. But all the stories had one thing in common. This man was powerful. So powerful, he was beyond human comprehension. And he was Vance's man. No one dared to call him a boy toy anymore. Everyone respectfully called him Mr. Hayes or even President Hayes. I, however, couldn't care less. I was still a slacker at heart. I can't work on time, left on time. My greatest joy was tinkering with strange new technologies in my office, or teasing our CEO, who was an ice queen to the world, but was becoming more and more like a normal woman in front of me. Isabel, that's the wrong move. Use your ultimate. It's a full combo. QWER, just delete him. Why are you just auto-attacking? My exasperated roar echoed from the CEO's office. On the massive desk, two computers sat side by side, both displaying a popular online battle game. Isabel's face was tense with concentration, her fingers fumbling on the keyboard. The character she was controlling was moving erratically, her skills abysmal. I forgot which key was which, she said defensively. I was speechless. I threw down my own mouse, reached over, and covered her hand on the keyboard with mine. Dummy, watch. It's like this. My hand was large and warm, completely enveloping hers. Isabel's body tensed, and her cheeks flushed a bright red. She couldn't focus on the game at all. Her heart was pounding like a drum. Ever since that night, I had become more and more hands-on with her. I always found excuses to hold her hand, put my arm around her waist, and even steal a kiss every now and then. She would protest, but her body would betray her. She enjoyed it, the feeling of being protected, of being cherished. Pinnacle. On the screen, with my hand guiding hers, our character executed a flawless combo and easily scored a pinnacle. Victory. See? Simple, right? I said smugly. Isabel looked down, her voice barely a whisper. I looked at her ears, which were red enough to be on fire, and chuckled. This woman was so damn cute. I let go of her hand and leaned back in my chair. By the way, I said casually, isn't our contract about to expire? Isabel's body jolted. The contract, the 1-year confidential employment and role-playing agreement that had bound them together. She did the math. There were only a few days left. The atmosphere in the office suddenly grew heavy. The contract was ending. And then what? Would he leave? The thought was a physical pain, a tight fist squeezing her heart. She didn't want him to go. Ethan, she looked up, mustering all her courage, and said, let's renew the contract. Renew. I raised an eyebrow. That's going to cost you. My market value has gone up. $500,000 a month won't cut it anymore. How much do you want? Isabel asked, biting her lip. I drew out the words, watching her nervous expression. Then I smiled. I stood up, walked over to her, and pulled something out of my pocket. It wasn't a check or a new contract. It was a small velvet box. I got down on one knee and opened it. Inside, a brilliant diamond ring sparkled, catching the light. Isabel Vance. I looked up at her shocked, disbelieving face, my expression more serious and sincere than it had ever been. I don't want your money. I just want you. I used to just want to be a slacker because there was nothing in this world that I really cared about. But that's changed because now I have you. So, are you willing to sign a lifetime contract with me? With this as the signing bonus. Tears blurred Isabel's vision once again. But this time, they were tears of happiness. She held out her hand, her voice trembling but firm. I am. I smiled. I took the ring and slowly slid it onto her slender finger. It was a perfect fit. I stood up and pulled her into a tight embrace. Outside, the sun was shining. On the desk, the now yellowed employment contract was lifted by a gentle breeze and fluttered to the floor. Who needed it anymore?